Hi, I'm going to see whether or not this works. I'm going to try recording the video, the meeting, as it were, because I want to talk a little bit about my book, Love is Green, Compassion as Responsibility in the Ecological Emergency. And I can see that that's back to front, so obviously this is mirrored. So I will just... What can I say? First of all, the main element of the book is that it concerns the ecological emergency. And in a sense, we're in an emergency at the moment. We may not think of this as an ecological emergency, but in a sense, of course it is, because it is related to the way that we treat and indeed the way that we think about other creatures. I think this is very relevant to yoga, so I'm going to talk about this in the context of yoga. Although I don't think it is exclusively concerned, my book isn't exclusively concerned with yoga or the practice of yoga. Okay, where to begin? When we think of ourselves in the world, we think of ourselves as separate from the world. I mean, we've got this skin and we've got what's going on inside it. And we tend to think of that as the boundary of our existence. Although, of course, in some very obvious ways, it's not. I mean, we both breathe in and breathe out between 5 and 50 times a minute, depending on what we're doing, I suppose. And we therefore are in constant exchange with the world. And that means that we're not just what's going on inside this skin, we're also what's going on outside, because we're bringing outside into us and we're letting inside out from us. So when I talk about non-dualism, that's the easiest and best example, just to get an idea of what I mean by this internal-external divide illusion. But I mean much more than that, because there are various levels at which this illusion operates. And sometimes, and I've worked quite a lot on, or I've looked quite a lot into the idea of lucid dreaming and also the idea of yoga nidra as examples and metaphors for the idea that we are in a dream state, an illusory state. And the internal-external divide element is very much part of that illusion. Now, it's a useful illusion, and it's obviously an evolutionary device. And my background is in philosophy, more, I suppose, than in the yoga tradition, although I've been practicing yoga since I was a teenager, and I've been a teacher since 2002, so I do have quite a lot of experience of yoga. But my point is that I've come at this from, if you like, a scientific perspective, and I'm really interested in how we have a kind of hangover from Judeo-Christian tradition, which posits a soul within a body and posits a future after death experience of either heaven or hell, which is obviously taking place in a different realm from this physical realm. I think that religion developed that kind of illusion, if you like. I don't mean to insult anyone by calling it an illusion, but that kind of approach because life was so difficult for people, and we have always needed stories, and those stories have needed to offer consolation for what we have to endure and suffer. After all, none of us choose to be born, so none of us choose to be here. So we're here by accident, effectively. Again, a lot of religious narratives would say that that's not so. And even yoga, in its traditional element, would say that there are many lives, and that we are in one of those lives, and the life that we are in at the moment is a result of past lives. And that's not my belief. So I'm not teaching from a traditional yoga perspective, although I have a great deal of respect for many of the ideas that have come out through yoga. Okay, so one illusion is the illusion that's easily shown up through experiencing the breath. And another illusion is this illusion that we're in this physical universe, but that there's another universe or another realm of existence, a spiritual realm. And again, I would say that that's illusory. And a third and related illusion is the illusion of there being a mind or a mental realm and a physical realm. I mean, very obviously, there are different levels, or if you like, layers to our experience. And I think yoga talks usefully about those, because it talks about the koshas. There are 5 koshas, 5 layers. So you have manomaya kosha, the food sheath or the food layer, and then you have pranayama kosha, which is the breath layer, and then the third layer is the layer of the lower mind. I'm just trying to remember its name. And then the fourth layer is, if you like, the higher mind. I'm just trying to remember that name. It certainly got the word jnana in it. Vijnana, it's called Vijnana kosha. And then the 5th layer is anandamaya kosha. Okay, your homework is to look up the name of the 3rd layer. So it may still come back to me. But these are not separate. And even in traditional yoga teaching, many yoga teachers would not, or yoga philosophy scholars or teachers would not teach that those are 5 separate layers. There would be an appreciation and understanding that there are different ways of experiencing what is an interconnected mesh of experience. So the experience of the physical body is not separate from the experience of the breath body. The experience of the breath body is not separate from the experience of the mind or the emotional body. I tend to think of the lower mind, if you want to call it that, as representing emotions or feelings, or the running self-commentary which goes on in the brain all the time. And then the higher mind tends to be thought of as more to do with your philosophy, your values, your overarching understanding of how you fit into the world. And then Anandamaya kosha is the bliss sheath. So it's if you can experience it, then it's the experience of your connectedness. And in fact, to me, Anandamaya kosha is really the fundamental sheath, and everything else, if you like, feeds into that. So yoga has these understandings of different layers of experience and their interconnectedness. Many schools recognize their interconnectedness, some see them as separate. And of course, in Western philosophy, we have Descartes, who illustrated very clearly the dualism of mind and body in the phrase that he used, cogito ergo sum, which is the idea that we have cogito, I think, ergo, therefore, sum, I am. So the idea is that it's because I'm a thinking thing, a res cogitans, that I have any kind of meaningful existence. So there is a physical realm, but that's a vehicle for the mind. And in fact, that's how Descartes justified animal experimentation, because he didn't believe that animals had a mind. He didn't believe that they had a lasting sense of pain. Obviously, he could see that they had a temporary sense of pain, in the sense that when you do experiments on animals, they react and they show that they're suffering. But he didn't believe that they remembered that suffering, so he thought it was justifiable to continue to experiment on animals. And I think that illustrates the danger of the illusion that the mental realm is separate, and also that only humans have a consciousness, a meaningful phenomenological experience that includes memory, and therefore that includes suffering. Okay, I don't know if you're following me, but that gives you some idea of some of the dualisms that that keep us in this state of an illusion. And I would say that the illusion, the illusory element about the mental physical divide, is that from a scientific point of view, the brain is the thing that does the thinking. If you do too much damage to the brain, then thinking doesn't exist anymore. And ultimately, that's enough proof for me that the mind is in any meaningful way inseparable from the brain. And also that if you had this, lots of people have done thought experiments about taking your brain out of your body and putting it in a vat, or downloading your consciousness, and that somehow managing to preserve ongoing consciousness. To me, that doesn't make any sense at all, because if you take your brain out of your physical experience, then you don't have interaction with the rest of the body, so you don't have thinking. And if you download consciousness, all that happens is that you could run a computer program, perhaps, and you could continue to have what looked like consciousness, but it would be a computer program. So it wouldn't be me or you or thinking in any meaningful way. Thinking has to take place within the realm of the physical experience, which includes your body. Okay, well, if I haven't confused you yet, that's great. And I hope that gives you a little bit of an introduction to non-dualism. Non-dualism is the idea that while it looks like there are two things going on, and I've mentioned a number of them, but there are a number of other things, including the environment, if you like. I tend to call it ecological systems, and I don't even confine that to living systems, but all the systems of energy and matter that we exist within are systems that to a large degree created and to a large degree sustain us. And we can't live outside context because we are part of that context. So this is both important and heartening. It should make us realize that we are, in fact, at home in the universe and at home in the world, particularly the natural world. It is our home. It is what we are. But we are also, individuals, and we are also humans, and we also rely on technology, and so we have to maneuver around this understanding of ourselves. We have to disentangle the myth of dualism and somehow reorientate, and I use that word deliberately because I think that a lot of East Asian philosophies are useful as guides, including yoga, including Zen, and particularly Zazen. We have to reorientate our understanding so that we begin to realize, really become aware of, and also make real our understanding of enmeshedness or interconnectedness. And that, to me, is the work of non-dualism. And we can do it through yoga practice, because by practicing yoga, we not only benefit ourselves physically, but we also benefit our understanding of what we are. We can, when we're moving, and when we're moving slowly, and when we're breathing consciously, and when we're putting ourselves into positions that are demanding, that demand our attention and demand our physical activeness, we are also much more likely to experience what it is to be a part of and apart from. So Advaita, it will always look like two. It'll always look like and feel like, and it should look and feel like there are two things going on. And yet we'll have an understanding that they are not two. One last thing I'll say as a preliminary to the practice on Monday and to further explorations is that this process of realization, which is very akin to the idea of practice realization, which is a Zen idea, that you practice not in order to realize, but practice is realization. So what you're doing when you're doing yoga is enlightenment. It is it is making something else real. It's making your awareness, it's making you realize, but it's also bringing a particular reality into possibility. And the reality that you can bring into possibility, and then into probability, and then into action, is the reality of attunement to realization, and then the logical attitude which arises, which you elicit. It's not in you, it's part of how systems cooperate. That attitude is compassion. the logical thing to do when you realize that you didn't choose to be born, you didn't choose your parents, you didn't choose your education, you didn't choose all the things that happened to you which caused you to react in particular ways, that at each point you were doing the best you could at that point to survive. And so was everybody else. And not just humans, but all creatures, all systems are doing what they can to keep in existence. And of course, we won't keep in existence forever. So the attitude, it's like watching yourself doing what you're doing while you're doing it. The attitude that arises, if you allow it to, is an attitude of compassion. And the wonderful thing about allowing an attitude of compassion to arise and to work through you is that you can watch the rage, the grief, the anger, the fear, the guilt, all the things that are an inevitable part of your cause-effect, if you like, karmic reactivity to what's going on. You needn't stop any of that. That is what it is to be alive. And I have an addicted brain, so, I need to watch myself going through a process of resistance, giving in, failing, drinking too much, regretting, stepping back, attempting to take control. I need to watch that process in myself, and I can be ashamed of it. Or do I not tell you about it? No, I think the compassionate thing to do is to be completely open and honest about it, and to say, this is what my experience is. And there are reasons why I have this addicted brain. So you watch, you don't stop any of the things that are going on. And you do this. This is the practice. You watch and you elicit a sense, you step back. That's why there are all these restraint practices in yoga. You step back, you watch, and you bring an attitude, or you invite, or you elicit an attitude of compassion. And then love can do what needs to be done. So then love works through you, and options become available that otherwise remain latent, if you like. So everything in the universe is subject to probabilistic laws, but those probabilities for reaction, if you like, don't arise for us if we're in a constant state of action, reaction, action, reaction. Rage creates an action of violence, or an action of lashing out, or an action of depression, or a sense of impotence, or a sense of isolation, and then perhaps addictive behaviors. And instead of that, when we practice, when I practice compassionate attunement, I can see all that goes on, the inevitability of the action, reaction, myself going into the kitchen, picking up a bottle of wine, and I can allow myself to attune to compassion. What is the compassionate act? And I'm not the actor anymore. Then love is doing what it needs to do through me. Then love is taking a breath through me, and other possibilities arise. Like I make kombucha, or I buy non-alcoholic beer and have it in the fridge. I don't like non-alcoholic wine. So I drink non-alcoholic beer or Pepsi Max or, have other options. So that's all I have to say today. Just this idea of non-dualism. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you, but there are a few ideas there for you to think about. Namaste.